What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do I always send you? DJLittleRock.com. One more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you can have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. The people need to be entertained. Let me entertain you. Are you not entertained? Make your next thing a big one. Today on the program, Pete Trabucco. Who's Pete Trabucco? Well, if you don't know by now, you're going to know in the next few minutes, so stick around for that. You're going to get, well, I'm going to get to talk to Pete. Yeah, and you're going to get to hear about Pete. This week's shows, I have two public shows this week. On Thursday night, I'll be at the Cedar Lounge Bar and Grill in Morrilton, Arkansas for the Video Dance Party Karaoke Jam from 6 to 10, 21 and over, please. Yes, we party on the patio. It's, they got the bar and they got the good food and they got the good people. Yeah. It's a good time. And you're the stars of the show. I did say karaoke, didn't I? That's on Thursday night. We start the weekend early. Cedar Lounge Bar and Grill, Morrilton, Arkansas, from 6 to 10. And then on Friday night, my usual Friday night gig, I'll be at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas, from 8 p.m. until 1 a.m. Full bar, kitchens open, pool tables. Yeah, they got a pool tournament on Friday night. So if you want to try to make some money playing pool, make some money out of playing pool. I can't sing, so I let you sing. You're the stars of the show. We get the stage is yours. You get to sing right next to little old me. Now, mind you, these two shows, wear a mask. Definitely wear a mask when you're walking in, when you're interacting with people, when you're sitting down having your drinky drinks and having a little food. You can pull that mask down. But hey, we're trying to take care of each other during this crazy time, this COVID-19 time. Who knows what's going on? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Only the scientists know, okay? And, I try to pay attention to the scientists, and most of them are telling me, put the mask on. So I'm putting the mask on. All right. And we'll get through this together. Yes. All right. Without further ado, I have a wedding on Saturday. Well, how could I forget that? But unless you're invited, you cannot come. The reason I mentioned it is that weddings are coming back, baby. Yeah. I love weddings. I do. I get to be a part of the big day. I know that's cliche to say, it's your big day. Yes, it is your big day. All right, let's get into it with Pete Trabucco. Now, I did get Pete on the Skype, so if you're listening to the audio version of this, I encourage you to check out the video version on my YouTube page, youtube.com/user/KeysDan, or just look up Keys Dan and find the Keys Dan YouTube that has the Radio What logo right next to it. There, it'll be there. All right, let's get into it with Pete Trabucco. Skyping Pete Trabucco now. All right, Pete Trabucco. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Hooray! I know how to pronounce Woids. Did I do a good
Nice Italian boy.
Yeah, I was trying to. Okay, all right. Yeah, let's do that. Let's start there. Give the people a little idea of who you are, Pete Trabucco.
Okay, are we on? Or are we just taping, or how we do this?
Man, you just roll right into it, man. It's a conversation about you. It's all about Pete Trabucco hanging out on the What Makes You Famous podcast. I don't do fancy introductions. I let it all unfold as time progresses. I want the people to find out about you as I find out about you. I don't do a lot of research, although for you, it's kind of hard not to do a lot of research because I've been following you on social media for a little bit. So I know that you got your hands in a lot of fires. You got a lot of tent poles, but you give the little blurb, if you're looking at the Wikipedia page, the top paragraph or two, what would Pete Trabucco's Wikipedia say?
Well, I would say that one of my claim to fame isn't actually being a writer of 2 books and been interviewed about 3,000 times on every major network in the country. travel, vacation, I guess, talking head, as you can see. I've done MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, Travel Channel, Weather Channel many times. But my claim to fame has nothing to do with a book author or anything along those lines. Really, the thing I'm most proud of is for about 10 years, I was involved with the American Heart Association. And my job was to get the automated external defibrillator bill through the state assembly here in New Jersey under Good Samaritan. And once we did that, we used the best practices from what we did here in New York State and also in New Jersey and got it in 50 states. So now every time you see a defibrillator at an airport or a defibrillator at a restaurant or even in your offices or your company in the cafeteria and the airports and so on down the line, it all started in New Jersey and New York. And I had a pretty good part in what was going on there. So I did a lot of television interviews. I did a lot of radio, even before I was doing the books, talking about how important it is to have an automated external defibrillator in premise in order to save lives. And I think at the time we were saying 100,000 lives would be saved just in New Jersey alone over a year's time. And now it's not just all 50 states, but it's now worldwide. So that's pretty much the claim of the fame. I don't think I'll ever reach that level again in my life, but had a real good time doing that. And I'm glad that, right now you find them everywhere in the airports and restaurants and any public facility. I know Bill Clinton signed the bill, President Clinton signed a bill in 1990. So I'm going back many, 1999, 2000. So I'm going back 20 years, but that's pretty much it. I'm a pilot. I got old, so I stopped flying and I started riding roller coasters. And I was afraid of roller coasters, so I got over that fear, basically writing just little memos on each ride I was on. And even though I was a pilot, I had a childhood fear. I overcame that, and that's how both books came into being.
Man, you just went. And you went. I love it. I can tell you do a lot of interviews. This is fantastic. But me being a former firefighter down in the Florida Keys from 89 to 99, I commend you. Defibrillators have saved many lives by my own hands. And you, man, how did you get involved with that action? Were you involved in the medical field or how did you get involved with the defibrillator part of your past?
Well, it's actually a crazy way of doing about that. I had a background as a chief of staff in the New Jersey State Assembly. You have an assembly where you are too in a state house and senators, state senators. And I was involved in the political aspect. I won't tell you what party because I know that could start some issues right by themselves. I was more of a middle of the road type of character anyway, but I had a lot of contacts at the state houses. And because of that, I was able, once I got hired by the American Heart Association, to not only run a 55-hospital, 5,500 instructor program on advanced cardiac life support, pediatric life support, and of course BLS, basic life support, which you took as a firefighter. Mm-hmm. But I also, my job was to actually make sure to get the bill out and have the trial lawyers like it, the AMA like it, the paramedics like it, and everyone liked the bill. And that was an uphill battle because a lot of people wanted to be the only people that could handle an automated external defibrillator because obviously, if you watch the old emergency show, they had to call Rampart, and Rampart would tell them whether or not their heart rhythms were VTAC or VFib or asystole and decide whether or not they were shocking a patient. Well, this unit actually does all that for you. If I put the unit on you, it wouldn't shock. It would only shock on somebody on a shockable rhythm that will then restart the heart. It's basically like turning your computer off and turning it back on. You get a shock, a volt, startup, and the heart goes back into a normal sinus rhythm. So, but believe it or not, I had no background in that other than the fact that I had a political background to the point when they actually hired me to be the trainer for the New Jersey area and to run this program. My wife, who is a doctor, looked at me and says, "What did you put on your resume that you got this job?" And the bottom line is I had no medical experience. I learned very quickly. I got trained in crash carts and all the different aspects of being involved with that. And of course, being able to talk like a doctor, at major major functions and all over the country to talk about why defibrillators save lives and how important they are. Police departments, fire departments, EMS units, and so on down the line. And even one time, it's a cool story, real quick. My daughter was 6 years old, and I had done all these special events, and I'd go up there with my little Annie and say, and now I'm going to show you how easy it is to use an AED, and I go through the whole process. But this time I said, I'm getting real tired of doing it myself. Is there anybody in the audience that would love to do that? And of course, my 7-year-old daughter raised her hand. It was a plant. It was a plant. But she raised her hand, just like, I don't know if you remember Welcome Back, Carter. Ooh, 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 ooh. That's what she did.
Yeah.
She made the noise like that. She came up, and now you got a 7-year-old who's actually working a unit, sitting there. She's going through the whole motions because obviously she got coached on that. But the bottom line is, when it was all done, every CEO that was there was so impressed that a 7-year-old can follow an ACLS, Advanced Cardiac Life Support protocol, and shock a patient back into a normal sinus rhythm and stabilize that patient for when EMS comes and obviously gets taken to the hospital. So that was a fun experience. She did it more than once. She did it maybe 5 or 6 times, and I can't tell you how many people turned, because they were all afraid of being sued and going through that whole process or not knowing what to do. And fortunately, people saw how easy it was. It was under Good Sam. And then when American Airlines had that issue with not having a defibrillator on board their airplane, and they got sued, whereas the other airlines did, it became pretty much standard practice to have these defibrillators on board. So it's a great experience. I'm really glad I was involved in that, and I'm really glad that it's all over the place at this point, and that it does save literally hundreds of thousands of lives every year.
Yeah, Engine 151 and Arnold Horshack notwithstanding, you are quite the salesman. I know that these defibrillators probably got to have a high price tag, but what price tag can you put on a human life, man? And you really, I've seen these defibrillators all over the country, in many different places. Did you start in New Jersey putting them in, or was that just your area that had they been in wide use previous to that, or did they start in New Jersey with this idea?
Well, I got hired in 1998. I was part of National out of Dallas, Texas, but I handled the New Jersey region and the New Jersey, I guess the state houses and all those that goes along with that. So in 1998, I was actually hired to do the job. In 1999, we actually pushed real hard to get it through the State House in New Jersey, through the Assembly, and of course through the Senate, voted on by the governor. At the time it was Governor Whitman, Christy Whitman. And once the bill got passed, at the same time, we had a bill in New York State, which was following the same guidelines as New Jersey. I also went there, best practices to help out with that. And that bill got passed. So the first 2 bills to pass the defibrillator bill was in 1999, and it was the New Jersey and New York State, Albany and Trenton. From that point on, it then became other people in other areas would call on me and other people to go in and show best practices, how we got the bill through the state assembly, how we got it through the state senate, how we got it on the governor's desk, and how we got the governor to sign the bill. It was really a no-brainer because if you look at the units and what they do, and when a person, as you know, is clinically dead once they go into one of those rhythms, the only way you can go is up. And no matter what you do, you're going to save that life. And we were able to get through that. So it started in New Jersey, and then from there, it went through all these different areas. But that was only one problem. Getting the units into the paramedics and the EMS and the hospitals and the lay people was one thing. But getting into the companies, that was another issue. And the one thing I'm really proud of is I have a sales background. And after we got the bills passed, we had a meeting in Dallas, Texas, and everybody's trying to figure out how are we going to get these units deployed. And I came up with the idea of going after the Fortune 500 companies. And in around 1999, late 1999, I approached Johnson & Johnson, which is right here in New Jersey. And after about 6 months of work, we were able to get a pilot program at J&J and their 9 company system. And that worked out really well. And once we got Johnson & Johnson, then everyone fell into place. We had IBM and all these different companies, all these Fortune 5s coming on board. And once they all came on board, and the Fortune 1000s came on board, and now it's pretty much where it's at this point. But it was a long process. Once we got J&J on board, I can go to Pfizer, I can go to IBM, I can go to these companies and say, hey, they've got them. And now all of a sudden, it's more like, well, the trial lawyers will say, if we don't have this, we could sue. So for them, it was a good deal to actually have this unit because it became standard of care. So it eventually reached your states not too long after, maybe 6 months later. We started heading Midwest and towards California, and then down south in Texas and Florida. By around 2000, it became pretty much standard of care in 50 states. And I believe in 2000, late 2000, actually early 2000, before he left office, Bill Clinton actually signed the bill into law. I think it was around mid 2000.
Oh, that is cool as can be, man. I mean, once you got Johnson & Johnson under your belt, you can say, yeah, Johnson & Johnson's got it. You need to keep up with the Joneses or the Johnsons as it is. And that's a good sales technique, man. So you are a good salesman. You got that under your belt. I'm okay. Going through the tent poles of you. I got the books, public speaking. I got the DJ. You were a DJ? Yeah, we've chewed a lot of the same dirt. I've been a DJ since '86. When did you start?
I started in '82. I ended up leaving DJing or disc jockeying on the radio because I ended up making more money in sales and advertising. So I ended up doing both on-air gigs or on-air, stints, and also basically full-time in sales. And whenever one of the stations I was on was a daytimer, and it would power down at a certain time from 1,000 watts to maybe 250 watts, and nobody wanted to do that shift. So Arnold Horchak here. So it ended up being the Power Down with Pete show for an hour and a half, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I did that. I'm doing a radio show right now in Philadelphia called The Weekly Rush, and we're entertaining guests. Like we just had Kool and the Gang on, Kool from Kool and the Gang.
That is Kool and the Gang.
I tell you, he has a new champagne out.
What?
Not only is he doing 100 concerts a year before COVID, but he also has a new champagne called Kool, which actually I tried at New York City when I was there for his opening, and we talked about it on the radio. It's actually very good. It's $100 a bottle, but it's well worth it. It's a very good bottle of champagne.
Excellent, man. I mean, how many times have I said that's Kool in the Gang for, that's good, that's groovy, that's awesome. They're wonderful, man. And I still play them at parties. I love Kool in the Gang. That's cool. And they're still doing it. Yeah. And okay, so back in '82, you're from New York and now you're in Jersey, but then you worked for a company in Texas. Did you spend any time in Texas, or was this you working in Jersey for a Texas company?
I was working in Jersey for a Texas company, American Heart Association. I spent a lot of time in National because I was attached to National. But my primary duties was the 55 hospitals and the 5,500 instructors and you've had to take those courses yourself. The BLS courses, the ACLS courses your local hospital or your local place where you have the instructors coming in. My job was to train the actual hospital system, to train the trainers, to train the people that went out to train the police, the fire, the EMS, the nurses, the residents, and so on down the line. It all came down to my desk and me signing off with a CEO for a major medical facility at the time. So it was an amazing job. I'm glad I did it, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I spent almost 8 years with them. And eventually, my job was actually replaced with a job in Dallas, Texas. And I'm a New Yorker. There's no way I'm going to be able to survive in Dallas saying y'all and stuff. So I just couldn't do it.
Well, that's amazing, man. I've never been really farther north than the Mason-Dixon line. I'm from Miami, and I was a firefighter down in the Florida Keys, and that's where I started my radio. My radio life was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I guess that in '86, that's where I started there. But in '82, what station were you on, and where was it again?
This was my first gig. I just
Yeah.
graduated from college. I did an internship at a radio station called WJDM 1530, and it was a little 500-watt radio station, probably not more powerful than your blow dryer. Remember the blow dryers way back then? This thing basically, when I was going out to sell advertising, if they had fluorescent lights on and they were 5 feet away from the transmitter, it might not work where I could hear the station because I'll probably hear the static from the fluorescent light. So that was a fun experience. It was a great little radio station. We covered part of New York City, but mostly New Jersey and Elizabeth. And, pretty much we had maybe, like I said, we had some pretty good listeners and a good following. A lot of the DJs that came out of WJDM, like even Crazy Eddie, he started, if you recall the old.
His prices are insane.
Yes, I think he's still in jail. I'm not sure, but he started at WJDM, and we had a whole bunch of people like Frank Cipolla, who ended up going to Channel 9 News, and then later on WNBC with Super Sales, and also with Imus in the morning. So I mean, we had some pretty good people that came out of the radio station. But that was my first stint, and I stayed there for many years and really had a great time.
Yeah, anybody that's seen Private Parts knows WNBC and how Howard Stern had I guess they had he had a feud with Imus. He must have had some kind of a personal issue with him on that channel, if I'm remembering that correctly.
It's true. In fact, Frank Cipolla, he was our news director over at WJDM. He wrote a book later on, and it's basically a great book. It actually tells the story about. In between both of them was Soupy Sales. Soupy Sales was doing the midday, and Soupy was trying to keep the peace. He was like a referee in a major bout between Imus and what do you call it? And Howard Stern. He had to try to get in between those two to try to keep them apart, because they really did not like each other. No.
What an amazing time for radio, man! Those are like three big, giant, icons of American history, entertainment. Soupy Sales, come on, man, that's great. and you were somewhere in the mix there. And this is all in the WNBC was definitely not 1,000-watt stick. See, I worked on a 50,000.
Yeah, that's a 50,000 clear channel radio station. You could hear that in about 15 states.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've done 100,000. I've done 50,000. I've done 1,000-watt stick, like in the middle of Miami on Miami Beach, and that hits quite a few people. As long as you're somewhere in the residential or somewhere in the business area, close to the beach. Yeah. But that was that first station AM or FM?
Oh, it was an AM oldies radio station. We played the top hits from the 70s and 80s, and it was back then, you could do AM radio and get away with it. It was 1982, so obviously that's no longer the case. In fact, the station I'm on now is a 10,000-watt radio station out of Philly, and really, it's all talk. I mean, talk, religion, sports really are the three main, things you can do now on AM radio, unless you're attached to an FM station. That's pretty much what's left on AM at these days.
Yeah, I think they have repeaters and such. Now, what was I thinking? Oh my goodness, AM. Oh, there was something in my head that you, but no, that's all right. I've totally fired on what I was about to think. I was thinking about. You were mentioning, AM, FM. Oh well, no problem, no big deal. Let us continue further on into the history of Pete Trabucco. Man, once you got out of radio, then you went to radio sales, or did you go to a different sales job?
I ended up spending about 15 years in radio sales between several radio stations. Became a sales manager. But then I also became a pilot. Obviously, I wanted to overcome my fear of roller coasters. So what better way to overcome your fear of roller coasters? Learn how to fly. And again, I got to thank my wife for that. because she ended up having me take a little flight at the Grand Canyon in a little airplane, a little putt-putt airplane. And I loved it so much that I actually went back and learned to fly, became a pilot, did a lot of aviation, learned to do loop-the-loops and Emmelmans and some crazy stuff, and had real fun with that. And eventually that led into jobs outside of radio. I became a person in the aviation industry, and I did a lot of aviation jet parts for your Gulfstreams and your Learjets and your Challengers, and basically traveled pretty much all over the country and all over Canada selling jet parts for aircraft. And all this time I've been writing, so I was writing the books, and I ended up getting involved with the astronaut program. I covered 3 astronaut launches: STS-124 Atlantis, STS-132, I think that was Discovery, and STS-135, which was Atlantis, and that was the last flight to go into space. And I spent many hours with these astronauts in the simulators with them, strapped in, upside down, going flipping on back and forth. And I ended up writing several articles that got published in multiple magazines, not just here, but in England, Australia. Basically, I think the title was Astronaut for a Day. And I ended up spending a full day with both mission control. And if you ever saw the movie Apollo 13, during the scene where everything goes crazy and the bells and whistles are going off, that is exactly what was happening during the 7 launches and 6, re-entries that we did during the time I was with them. I mentioned only 6 because on one of them, we didn't make it. We actually burnt up in the atmosphere. So, and I was there to see how things can go pretty wrong in a full motion simulator over at Johnson Space Center.
That is amazing. Now I remember what the question was about the radio, but after that story, in '82, did you still need to have an FCC license?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that was going away. But yeah, we did. I remember when I was on that college radio station of mine, WKNJ 90.5.
Yeah, by 80.
We were a 10-watt wonder. A 10-watt wonder, and I'll tell you.
By 86 at WKPX, some of the people had FCC license, but they didn't have to by that time. But yeah, tell me about WKPX in Fort Lauderdale. Was a college radio. It was out of Piper High School, but it was for Broward Community College, and that's what my first radio experience was. But tell me about your college radio and man, and I don't even want to talk about radio anymore. Kennedy or Johnson Space Center, or doing space piloting. Where did you go with the piloting? And it seems like every job that you have, you start in the glamour job, like being on the radio, and you realize that being on the radio, you don't make any money on the radio. It's the novelty. It's the celebrity of being on the radio is how you make any money. Oh, hey, we like your voice. We like how you sound on the radio. Why don't you come to our grand opening? Why don't you come to our party and DJ our event? That kind of a thing. That's where you make the money on the radio for the most part. There's a few people like Imus and Howard Stern and others that have made, hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars. But for the most part, it's $10 an hour, and some swag. Here's a T-shirt, and a CD. But you got into the sales job.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you went from radio to sales, and then you went from piloting to sales again, So it seems like, with sales, you can make your own money. Like I did sales at Bally's, and I remember that there was like a $650 draw, and then anything you made over that was yours, was yours to keep. You pay back the draw, and then you can make $1,000 a week, $2,000 a week, whatever, depending on how many gym memberships you sell. And I was doing pretty good over at Bally's, but you can make your own money as a salesman. Is that what led you to sales? Was being able to set your own salary?
Well, and you're a disc jockey, so you know what it's like. It's so much fun to do, and for those people that want to be radio disc jockeys or radio announcers, you will have no more. That's the most fun you could ever have, is to actually do that. Unfortunately, we're a dime a dozen. There's a lot of us out there that do this, and unfortunately, unless you're in a major market, you're really not going to make a lot of money doing that. You're going to make money on doing side deals with people, with companies and organizations. Um, Good case. I mean, you mentioned Imus in the morning and Howard Stern. There were sales reps at WNBC that made a lot more than they did. And Soupy Sales, I won't tell you what Soupy made because he didn't make a heck of a lot. And he was the third guy. He was the third wheel during the afternoon drive. So, radio and television, they don't pay as much as sales did. But the way I looked at it, I enjoyed doing both. I enjoyed being on the air. I enjoyed talking with the audience, getting them in the mood, making them feel good about a memory, a song, talking up to the post, which was very important way back when. And for those that don't know what that means, you got to talk right up into the instrumental ends and the vocal starts, and you got to get that right. So that was always fun to do. But let's face it, life is sales. You sell yourself every day. Everything you do in life has to do with promoting yourself, establishing a rapport with people, enjoying people. And I love to do the live remotes. I had the most fun doing those because I met people. I met different individuals. I got to know who they were. And that's the thing about sales that I really liked over these years, is that every day is different. You meet a lot of different people, and you can have a lot of fun and understand what people are all about and what types are out there. And, I would be awful if I was on a island by myself, just talking to myself. That would not be fun. I'd rather be with 1,000 people, even if they were cannibals. I'd make conversation with them or something. It would be a lot more fun to do that. So I like being around people.
Cannibals. Hey, this Fred tastes good. What is this, a leg? All right, Pete. Well, you're a people person, man. I love it. That's great, man.
But see, I'm a salesperson, so it wouldn't be me you're reading. It would be the guy over there, because I would sell the program and why he tastes better.
Yeah, Fred tastes great. I didn't say Pete tastes great. Pete's living, man. Pete's having some dinner. Pete knows how to talk his way around a situation. You got the gift of gab, man. I've been talking in the mics for a long time, and yes, there's not a lot of money that I've made on the radio, but definitely it's outside and meeting people.
So much fun.
Yeah, and getting to interview people like you, and I've had hundreds, maybe thousands of interviews over the last since 1986. So, what I like about this type of interview is I get to dig a little deeper into who Pete Trabucco is and find out more about you, man. There's so much. I kind of skimmed your bio, but there's so much more to you. There's so much nuance to people. You're never just one thing, and I see that you like to put your hands in a lot of pots, man. And so tell me about the roller coasters. You said you were scared of roller coasters, and you wrote a book about roller coasters. How did that happen?
Yeah, it was therapy. It was actual. Instead of going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I saved money and I wrote a book on it. What happened is I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I got on a roller coaster, and I wasn't ready for it, and I cried the whole time. And when I got off, I swore to myself that I would never ride another roller coaster in my entire life. And that went on until around maybe 40 years old, which I didn't. I mean, when I was dating my wife, I was holding her pocketbooks and watching her and waving at her while she was going on rides. And I didn't like it, but at the same time, I didn't want to go through that. My daughter was born in 1996, and at that point, I said, I don't want to always sit on the sidelines and do this. And at that point, I was already a pilot. I got my pilot's license in 92. And I realized that if I could get a pilot's license, and again, my wife got me to my better half got me to that level. Why can't I get over this roller coaster thing? So I decided that I was going to do a program, and I went through all the different rides. In the background, you can see one of the rides that I did, which obviously is Millennium Force, one of the tallest and fastest roller coasters in the country. I started slow. I kept taking notes on every single ride that I was on, and eventually I got to the really large ones. And one day someone looked at my book and says, "Pete, you just wrote all this stuff on about 300 roller coasters. You got everything. Why don't you put that into a book?" And that's what happened. I ended up writing a book. First book was in 2009, America's Top Roller Coasters and Amusement Parks. And then my second book came out, A Personal Guide to the Best amusement park, thrill rides, and roller coasters, and of course water parks. and that came out in 2018. So it was more therapy to do the books. I got a lot of television interviews, and you can figure out why. The hook of the book is we got a pilot here who does loop-the-loops, but he was afraid of roller coasters. And he wrote books on that. We got to get him on the show. So,
Man, everybody's got a hook, got to have a hook, and that is quite a hook, man. I figure by the time you're a pilot, you can't be afraid of anything really. You're up in the air. But okay, that first roller coaster, do you remember where it was, and was it a wooden roller coaster, or was it a my favorite ride at the amusement park is always the bumper cars. I like to stay on the ground too, but I'll ride a roller coaster. But do you remember what your first one was and where it was?
it was on Staten Island. It's just off Seaside Boulevard. It was a small little park. The ride itself was maybe the drop was 5 feet, if at most. It was about 5 feet. And unfortunately, see, the thing is, and this is in my chapters in my books, I talk about fighting fear, getting over your fear. Yeah, I got over the fear, but I never got over the childhood fear of being on a roller coaster. So anytime I would attempt, my mind would go back to the day I was at that little roller coaster, and I would at that point basically freeze up. Even though I did the loop-the-loops at 5,000 feet, upside down Emmelmans and whatever. It wasn't a roller coaster where I'm strapped in and I'm hanging in there, and so that is the fear you had to get over, was the childhood fear. And like I said in my books, the only way you can do that with any fear, whether it's a fear of public speaking, of spiders, of anything, is you've got to take your fear on full, straight on, head on, and overcome it. And that's pretty much what I did in my fear of flying, to become a pilot. And I had help from my wife, obviously, who got me on board. But I needed a little push, and once I got that, that's what the whole situation is it's about fear. It's about overcoming your fear. And whether it's roller coasters or whatever, I always recommend people, listen, you got a fear, hit it head on. Don't back off, because it'll be with you for the rest of your life. And that's not a good way to live.
Pete Trabucco, for a 7-year-old, a 5-foot drop could be, it might as well be a mile, man. Yeah, I could see it. I could see it being pretty daunting. Now, your wife sounds like a very special lady, man. Sounds like she's through thick and thin and pushing you along and making sure. And not only you have your wife, but you also have a little lady as well, born in '96. That's fantastic, man. A couple ladies in your life that help keep you young, and maybe put a few gray hairs in your head because you worry too much, right? We worry about our families.
Absolutely. I mean, they're the best part of my life. In fact, without them, I have no clue where I'd be at this point. So I'm very grateful and very happy that they're around and taking all my guff all the time and everything, that I end up doing. But because my wife and my daughter are probably a lot more talented than I am, but they like being behind the scenes, and they're very good at it, and they actually make everyone else look good. So I'm really happy to be in their lives.
Well, I'm guessing you're still on TV quite often. You still do what, the news, like news segments every day or every couple of days, or how does that work? Are you still in the entertainment business?
Well, listen, you only go around once in life. I learned that very early on, and to do as many things as you possibly can, if you possibly can. I mean, so yeah, I was in my full-time jobs have always been either in sales or in entertainment of some sort. Right now, I do a radio show because I wanted to get back into it again, which we're doing extremely well. We got some big guests that are coming on that have come on. But most of the time, I get interviewed for like Fox News and CNBC and Travel Channel and on what's happening worldwide. If a plane goes down, I get a call. Why did the plane go down? If there's a few flights that go up, I'm at an airport talking with CBS, Channel 2, New York City, and they want to talk to me in person or before COVID or now about what's going to happen at these airports. What should you do if you're a passenger and you need to get on a plane, or let the buyer beware for summer rentals. I think I've covered literally hundreds of topics from networks and radio stations and that basically just want to talk to me because I'm billed as a travel and vacation and aviation guy. And if you need to have a quick interview, usually I can find the time to find one. And I've done interviews in cabs, I've done interviews at airports, I've done interviews pretty much everywhere. So I'm a pretty good person to talk to. And if I don't know the answer, I'll just say, listen, I don't know. But a lot of times I'm able to do that. And that's one of the reasons why I've been interviewed over 3,000 times over the last 10 years.
Oh, you really want to fill the rest of that time? You could start a podcast, and you'll always have something to do and a microphone to talk into. Whether you do it by yourself or you give advice about the different avenues, the different experiences that you've had over the years, or you can do an interview show like I'm doing with you right now. Now, I noticed that just recently you talked to Myra. I'm a fan, man. How was the interview with Myra? I talked to her maybe about half a year ago, and I've been a fan since she did the Dancing in the Street song way back when. I started playing that on the radio when she was just a little girl.
That's right. That's right. Dancing in the Street, and later on, she hit it big, obviously, with Miracles Happen.
Yep.
I've known Myra for about since 2004, 2005, when Princess Diaries came out. I've been in touch with her. She actually was billed as the first Latino woman to actually be marketed by Disney. Every other Latino woman that has come out of Disney owes a lot of gratitude to Myra because she started that whole thing way back when with those #1 hits. And she's just an amazing woman, very religious in California. I just interviewed her. Again, I got an interview show. It's an hour show called The Weekly Rush on the radio station. And bottom line, can I give the website of the radio station? Is that possible? Or?
You can say whatever you want. It's your podcast, Pete Trabucco.
Well, it's the radio station is www.wwdb860. And then you can go right to the podcast because we also have podcasts in addition to the actual radio show. So that would be www.wwdb.com. I believe Myra was my second interview, and she's just an amazing woman. If you ever get a chance to interview her, please do. She would love to talk. She's got a new album coming out. She's got new music coming out, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get her on my show. She's got an amazing voice, a beautiful daughter, and she's done very well for herself in her life. She's very big in the Latin community up in the San Francisco area, and she's just a doll, and I love her.
Well, like I said, I had her on the podcast about 6 months ago. So yeah, I talked to her. It was almost about 2 hours, I think, and we chit-chatted about all the stuff you were just talking about. It's just wonderful. But yeah, I noticed that you had talked to her recently. But for somebody like you who has so much experience, I want you to have a podcast. You need to have a podcast. I could see, that you would spend a lot of time to the dismay of your family. It might take away from your family time. So maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe I ought to rethink this. But
well,
yeah.
As I said, I missed radio a lot. I've done a lot of television. I prefer to get interviewed. When you're at Fox News or CNBC or the Today Show or Good Morning America or whatever. It's so much fun when somebody else is doing the heavy lifting and all you're doing is answering questions. And I've been learning this now because it's been about 10 years since I did a radio show. That interviewing people is a lot more difficult than actually being the person that's interviewed. And you have to know the questions. You've got to know where you're going to go with the interview, when to stop them, when to do a lot of different things. Podcasts, we'll eventually get there. The show that we're doing now will eventually go syndicated. We want to get our feet wet, so we're going to spend about a year in Philly, get it going really well, and then we'll attempt a syndication on one of the networks, and we're working on details of that. But I also do acting, so I'm involved in doing television and acting, and I've done a lot of theater in the New York area, New York City, as well as in that place. So that keeps me busy as well. So I'm not sure if I could ever fit a podcast in.
Well, I got to figure out that whole Q&A thing because most of my podcasts are fly by the seat of my pants. You know what it is? It's a conversation. I want things to unfold kind of like like a job interview or like a date. Hey, we're on our first date, Pete Trabucco, and I'm learning about you, man. Hey, tell me about yourself while we're having. I guess I have some tea sitting here. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about the acting, man. See, there's another tent pole that just showed up. When did the acting start? Was that something that you did as a 7-year-old when you gave up roller coasters forever?
No, actually, I started acting in college, and the reason why I was on the football team and I was on the baseball team, and both teams were not very good. So there were not a lot of people that came to our games. We lost every one practically, and I was a starter. So, and that's why we were that bad because I was a starter, and I'm like 5'9" and about 180 pounds, and I was a wide receiver. So the only way to really meet girls was to actually go and become the theater program, which we had a very good theater program at Kane University, a very good theater. It held 1,100 seats, and it was one of these state-of-the-art places. And there were a lot of women, and I will be honest with you, it was a way to actually meet women. And I got involved in that, stayed with it for 4 years, had fun, left the industry, ended up getting into radio, and I didn't get back into it until my daughter got into it many years later. And she's a very good actress. She's done movies. She's actually doing a lot of the makeup artists that you see and all the stuff that's done. She's doing the special effects and makeup, as well as a full-time master's degree in public health, working for Mount Sinai Hospital. She's in the thick of it right now in New York City with COVID, but she also does that. But to get back to that whole program, I got back into the acting because she was doing it, and I ended up, people said, Pete, we need some people. I mean, we need an old person in the scene, or we need to do this, and we need to do that. And before you know it, I ended up getting calls, and I've done a lot of musicals. I've done a lot of off-Broadway in New York City, the Producers Club. We also did a lot of musicals. Like the last couple of musicals I did was really fun. My publicist said, "Hey, listen, you're a travel and vacation guy. You talk about travel and vacation on all these networks and everything. Why don't we get you in Mamma Mia, and you can be Bill Austin, the guy who's the travel guy? That might work out really well because then you can promote it and say a travel guy playing a travel guy, a Mamma Mia." And I said, "But I really can't sing."
Right.
So that was a little bit of an issue. But I've been an ABBA fan, and I'm sure you have too,
Oh
for
yeah.
many, many years. And I know every ABBA song, and I can probably sing the melody of those songs. And the good thing about Bill Austin is he doesn't really have a solo in the show. He does sing a lot of chorus, and he does have certain parts where he's actually singing by himself, but never a full song. So I was able to pull it off, then I guess I did a good job because I got another director who wanted me to do the show again. And then again during COVID, I was going to do the show a third time for a regional theater, and unfortunately, due to COVID, that was canceled. But yeah, I've done that. I've done White Christmas. I've done Anything Goes, and a bunch of Mr. Roberts was a great one to do. So I did a lot of that, and sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't. It's more like just for the love of theater and just to have fun, but it all started because my daughter was involved, and I wanted to be around.
See, that's a good way to have some family time. That's fantastic, man. That shows that you're a good dad too. That you wanted to spend time with your baby girl, and hey, that's a way to spend time with her. For me in high school when I was trying to get over my fear of girls, I took dance and I took fashion marketing. I never got into the theater, but yeah, that was the similarity where the similarity ends. That's where I wanted to meet up with girls. So did I guess theater helped you in that respect to get over your fear of girls and help you to get some dates, I guess. Oh well, that's a whole nother story.
Well, I was lucky when I was in high school, and of course, everything happens in high school, as you know.
Uh-huh.
And in school, I was on the football team, I was on the baseball team, and we had one heck of a football team. We were city champions in New York City. We actually played several of our games at Yankee Stadium or at Shea Stadium, the finals, and we had the every Thanksgiving Day, we played the big Thanksgiving Day parade a game on Thanksgiving on one of the major television stations here in New York City. So our game got televised. So being on the, unlike in college, being on my team, Newark High School, we had a lot of clout, and it was very popular. So, and the thing you do when you first join a school is you make the football team and you date a cheerleader, and after you've done that, you're like the cool person. So, I was lucky enough to actually do that in the freshman year. I started dating a cheerleader, and for 4 years, I dated a cheerleader, and everything was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, Pete Trabucco. You're pretty cool, man. I knew you were going to be a good dude, and you know, after following you on social media a little bit and learning, man, I'm glad that we're having this conversation. It took a little bit to get us together, but I'm glad that it finally worked out. But you know, there's more to you. What is the public speaking all about? There's another tent pole. When did you start motivational speaking or public speaking added to your repertoire?
Well, you know, again, that all started from the American Heart Association.
Okay.
Motivational speaking, doing events, being called to talk in front of groups. It's all about motivating yourself. I mean, and again, thanks to my wife, I'm able to be a lot more positive. And I think a lot of what I teach or what I preach or what I try to do with others is because of the things that she has instilled in me. Now, if I only do it for myself all the time, that would be great. But you know, basically, you do a lot of that. And again, motivational speaking is very important to keep people positive, especially now during a pandemic and COVID-19. You know, your mental health is probably the most important factor in doing this. Yeah, a lot of salespeople are down now because they can't go out and meet people, and they've got to do something they've never done before. They got to do what us radio jocks do with our voice, and that is, or radio announcers or podcast people, and that is being able to talk to people on the phone using voice inflection and using our rapport as opposed to trying to rely on other things. And motivating people to do that, you know, I mean, a lot of people are afraid to pick up that phone. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of the phone being hung up on them and not getting anywhere with the customers or clients. So that's a motivation factor as well. So yeah, from time to time I do that. It's on my website. And I've done a lot of different motivational programs. I try to do it for people that need it. Most of the time, I won't even ask for pay because it's usually for veterans organizations, and it's usually places like that. And I'd rather pay it forward. So my books right now, any money I receive from my books, all that money goes to charity. So you know, I try to always pay it forward. You know, I've been very lucky. God has been very good to me. And I like to be able to pay it forward. Now, I want to talk about you and what you have done. Okay, being a firefighter. Now, that is something that my brother does. My brother does that. And I'll tell you, anyone, you know, they say anybody who's in an airplane, flies an airplane and flips it upside down and does crazy things at 10,000 feet is really crazy. Well, no, I would say that being a firefighter is probably the craziest thing because you're running into buildings. And again, I'm from New York. I was there at 911. I was there in New York City. My brother was actually in one of the towers. Thank God he survived, but it fell. And I knew a lot of firefighters that I went to school with at Newark High School, played football with me, who perished during that. And when everyone's running out of a burning building, you guys are running in. So thanks again for your service.
Oh, that was an interesting time in my life. You know, I was always doing something else with you know, while I was doing the firefighting. But yeah, running into the building was kind of crazy, and having little fireballs and things exploding around me while I'm trying to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. Yeah, it's tough. And then, well, when I got the job in the hospital, you know, about 7 years into firefighting, I said, well, let me find out what happens in the hospital. I had a few days off. So I became an EMT in the hospital, a tech, and I learned about EKGs, going back to the beginning of this podcast, and phlebotomy and that kind of thing. That was kind of a fun part of my life, man. Saving lives, well, maybe, you know, but definitely helping people is what we all should be doing. And it sounds like you're a people person anyway. You deal with people on a on a personal level. Even if you're trying to sell them something, you try to get to know them and see if they actually need that thing that you're trying to sell. Hey, I do have something in my case that could help you in your life as a salesman. And it, cold calls, that's so crazy. Unless you had the good leads, working at Bally's, if I didn't have leads, I would open a phone book and call people and see if they wanted a gym membership. That is the hardest part of sales, I think, is cold calls. How often did that happen? Or did you always have the good leads like Glenn Ross?
No, unfortunately, and again, I've actually trained salespeople. The job that I'm in, basically, I oversee. I have 12 different reps from all over the Northeast that I trained, hired, recruited, trained, and then gone out on the road with them. And I've done this many times. Best practices. Sales is a process. You have to be a people person for that. You've got to be able to deal with rejection, and most importantly, as a salesperson, you've got to be able to walk into a place and know that 9 times out of 10 you're going to get rejected, but it's always that 10th time that it's always a numbers game, and you're always going to be able to succeed as long as you keep a positive attitude about yourself and about what you're doing. You will be able to succeed, and it's just basically a numbers game, establishing a rapport, and that's very important. Having that person trust you, not sell something that they don't need. Try to look into what they need and go from there. And again, it's everything in life. I mean, when you sell yourself, if you're on a job interview, same thing happens. You've got to be able to sell yourself. You've got to be able to find out and be a good listener, find out what the company needs or a person needs, and then be able to say, well, here's how I can fit into that program in order to help you do that. One of the hardest things I ever sold was radio advertising, because you cannot touch it, you cannot feel it, you cannot, it isn't like a coupon in a newspaper where you could bring it into a local restaurant or a store and say, here, I got that. Radio advertising is a concept. It's a concept sell. And even now with the new radio stations, with all the internet, it's still more of a concept sell where you're actually doing name recognition. You're paying a lot of money to get that name recognition as a secondary outlet. And a lot of people, unless you establish a rapport with them on that, it's a very tough sell. But if you could sell advertising, when I was hiring people, and I'm not doing that now during COVID, of course, but if they had radio advertising background and they were successful there, I wanted to talk to them, because that's pretty much, what we're doing now. Selling, disposable gloves, wipers, safety equipment, PPE equipment. It's a lot easier than selling a 60-second spot during midday when you can't visit somebody and show them what the commercial or what you're doing.
Yeah, you made me think of Billy Crystal in City Slickers. I think that was his job, and the whole reason that he needed a break and time off. What do I sell? I sell air. Yeah, and he had to go off and rope cattle, I guess. But yeah, I could see. I used to do the morning show at Exito 105.5 in Miami, and then I would have to go out and sell my show. Hey, did you just hear the show? Well, now I'm here at lunch selling you my show, selling the air on my show. Yeah. Oh, that was the worst. That was the worst. I'd rather do the show and not sell the show. The handful of times that I've been a salesman, I realized you have to believe in what you're selling. That's the only way I got through selling air and even selling exercise at Bally's, was believing in the thing that I was selling. Yes, you need this thing because it's going to enhance your life, whether it be airtime on the radio or exercise at Bally's at a gym. And I'm guessing that's you have to believe in the things that you're selling, right, Pete?
Absolutely. The first thing you need to know is if you're selling something that you don't believe in, a product that you don't believe in, you should not do that. I mean, if I'm selling my radio show, if I don't believe in that radio show, obviously it's not going to sell. I'm not going to be able to influence anyone, and I'm not going to feel good about the product. And it's kind of like the old Flashdance song. You want to dance through your life. You want to do things that are fun to do, so that when you look back at your life, you could say you won't say what if. What if I didn't do this? What if I could have done that? You want to be able to enjoy your life. And I always tell people that, yeah, a job is a job, but you're looking for a career. You're looking for something that's going to make you feel good. And whenever I talk to people, like I said, my claim to fame isn't all the interviews I've done, the books I've written, learning to fly, doing everything. Second to my family, the most important thing I ever did in my life was being able to promote automated external defibrillators and work with paramedics and EMTs. By the way, when we did the ACLS courses and the basic life support courses for trainers, as well as the pediatric advanced life support courses, the best people, the people that were the best instructors who became instructors to instruct the instructors were usually paramedics, EMTs, and ER nurses. Docs were not on that list.
Yeah, because you're in it. As a paramedic on the streets, man, you're in it day in, day out. And as a nurse, for sure, you're in it. The doctors, when I worked in the middle of the night, and I'm going to call out some of these doctors, they would sleep in a room until, the test results were back. Wake me up when the test results come back. But I would work 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. and the doc slept quite a few of those hours, and the nurses and myself, the tech, were doing most of the work and making sure that the patient was taken care of. Man, I know I've taken a little bit of your time, Pete, but there's one thing on the blurb. You've gone through most of the other things. We got a sales executive, aviation pilot, actor, former DJ. What's a slightly aging tennis player? Tell me about the tennis. Could you have been the next Andre Agassi? What happened, Pete?
No, I played tennis. Again, I played tennis in college. I enjoyed it. Wasn't the greatest, but I did okay. The thing when you get to be my age, and I'm 62 years old now, I was playing hardball, not softball, but hardball in the 30 and over league until about 4 or 5 years ago. But then there comes a time, and if you recall Moneyball, there comes a time when the sport itself tells you cannot play it anymore. And it happens sometimes early in your career, sometimes later in your career. I was lucky enough to try out with the New York Mets in 1978 in a closed tryout at Shea Stadium for 3 weekends. I made it that close to the top 20, and I was one of the last people to get cut, and that was fantastic. But I stopped playing baseball about 5 years ago because of my knees and because I couldn't stretch a single into a double or a double into a triple and didn't want to. And that's a problem. So, but tennis has always been there. Before this podcast, that's where I came from. I was playing competitive tennis. I still play regularly. I still have a 90-mile-an-hour first serve, which is not bad.
Wow.
And I do play with a gal every once in a while. Her name is Katarina Lindquist. You might recall in 1985, she was number 10 in the world in the Women's Tennis Association. She beat Steffi Graf. She beat Martina Navratilova. She beat Pam Shriver. And it's funny, whenever I play her, she loves to do this to me. She'll let me get ahead in a set. Like I'll get 3-1, 4-1, and obviously 6 is where you want to, in order to get the set. And I'll get to 3-1, 4-1, maybe even 5-1. And then she goes into high gear. And Katarina comes back from 4-1 and 5-1 on godly shots like you would not believe. And I'm hitting hard. Wow. And before we're done, I lose the set every single time. That's why she made it to the semifinals in Wimbledon, in the U.S. Open, in Australian Open, because they're on a different level. And she still got it.
So what's it like to be the prey of a lioness? She's just toying with you. She's toying with her food. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And I'm thinking I'm doing really well, and I actually am doing pretty well. But because we got people coming over and saying, "Wow, he might beat her," and there's a big crowd on looking at, he's gonna beat her, he's gonna beat her, he's gonna beat her, and then no. As the crowd got bigger, obviously the points were bigger, and Katarina was just this is why she's still one of the top people, and one of the reasons why I like playing her is that she is a competitor. She's a 2-time Olympian. She won a bronze medal, I guess, one year in the Olympics.
Well, she sounds like a showman. That's great, and that's what you do to make yourself better. You got to play with people that are better than you. You got to learn from people that are better than you. That's how you strive. You get better, and yeah. And I go back to your wife pushing you along, man. It sounds like she's very, very special, and I'm very glad that you have each other to get through this crazy life. I mean, how's COVID treating you out there in Jersey?
Well, obviously, you're familiar with New York City and New York, where we had 35,000 deaths in the first 2 months of COVID.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to handle the situation quite well. It got pretty bad here. Now the rest of the country is going through what New York went, and thank God we're at least able to handle the situation better as far as being able to, to have different best practices on how to actually overcome this disease. Less deaths, less percentage. If you were on a respirator here in New York City during March or April, your chances of survival was about maybe 30% coming off of the ventilators. Things have changed. There's a cocktail now. People are doing different things. And the disease itself, or in this case, the virus itself, has weakened a little. So we're better. But it was crazy here. My daughter actually, as I told you earlier, is a graduate student. She's working at Mount Sinai. She actually interviews a lot of the COVID patients after they've recovered for long-term information and care research, which Mount Sinai does, and will share with the rest of the world. So she's dealing with them all the time. And the problem with COVID right now is that, yes, it is a virus, and yes, you most likely will overcome it and be fine. Even with risk factors, there's still a very good chance. But long-term effects is going to be where we're going to have to start doing research on this, and that's one of the things that we're doing now. I mean, and that's what she's doing now is coming up with how to deal with the long-term effects of this virus.
Well, I thank your daughter for the scientific work that she's doing. I don't know who to believe. I got some scientists that are saying it's not so bad, and some scientists will say it's terrible. You got the president that says, "Hey, I got it," and throws off his mask. Everything's great. So I don't know what to believe. But I figure. Whether this virus is like the flu or worse than the flu, everybody's going to get it eventually, like the flu. If you've had the flu before, you're going to get COVID at some point in your life. It's here. It's with us for a while. What do you think?
Yeah, but again, I have to state this, and on Facebook, I get those posts all the time that it's a hoax, it's not real. And you know what I say to them? I always respond to people like that, and I say, I'm glad you're safe in wherever you live, and it's mostly the Midwest or somewhere where it's not that crowded, where there's not a lot of people. But I say, look, I would have a different story if you were in New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut when we had our first patient, which was actually in Westchester County. And what happened in the next 3 months, you should do a tour of duty at a hospital system or an EMT or a paramedic or a doctor or an MD or even a lay person for the 2 months that we had to survive here in New York City. Your tune would change. This is serious stuff, even though it's not as bad as you think it is. Mm-hmm. And yes, we now know how to deal with it better. Mm-hmm. It's still very serious stuff, and I mean that.
No, I appreciate that perspective, Pete Trabucco. Here in Arkansas, where I currently reside, it almost was business as usual. We almost kept everything open. There was that first 2 months where we kind of locked everything down, and I lost all my DJ jobs, so it was a little struggle for that first 2 months. But now we're out. Wear your mask. I truly believe that whether you believe it or not, wear your mask. It can't hurt. It's not hurting anybody. You got people that, I got respiratory problems. Well, then stay home. For the rest of us, go out, do your business, wear your mask. That's an important part. Even the doctors, Dr. Fauci, who may or may not get fired in the next week or so. I trust what he's saying. He seems like a pretty smart guy. Yeah, but yeah, wear your mask. That's an important thing. All right, Pete Trabucco. I know I'm taking your time. Any other avenues you want to explore? You want to talk about, or any shout outs you want to give? You want to brag on your family a little bit more?
Well, no, I thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. You have a great show. I've been watching your podcasts, and it's a shame I can't see you on the screen, but because I hate when the screen's just me, because I'd rather be the little dot in the bottom there, so I don't see me that closely. It's like radio. No one ever likes their voice on radio when it's on tape, and they're like, "Oh my God, do I really sound like that?" Well, it's the same thing with video. I prefer to be in Cleveland, that far back, when someone's doing an interview with me. But I do appreciate the time. Be safe. Obviously, we're still not out of the woods yet, and when a vaccine is there, that will help. But as you said, this is not going to go away anytime soon, and it's going to have to be implemented in our lives. And we're a very good species. We can overcome anything. If just go back to the Battle of Britain. Every day, the Germans came over and bombed England and the UK, and people just went through like life was normal. They would sweep up, clean up, and continue the day, even though the next day they know it's going to get bombed all over again. People are very resilient, and we are. After 9/11 here in the New York City area, we were able to recover, and now the rest of the world is able to recover. Our life has changed a little bit, but we've adapted. Same thing will happen now with COVID-19. And just keep positive.
I believe that to be true. And there you go, motivational speaking and getting people all motivated and happy and looking on the bright side of things. How do people find your book, and how do people find your various social medias, and how do you want people to connect with you?
Well, the books are out. Basically, you can find them anywhere books are sold. America's Top Roller Coasters and Amusement Parks, and A Personal Guide to the Best Thrill Rides, Amusement Parks, and Water Parks. You can also find it at Starry Night Publishing, www.petetrabucco.com, my last name. And of course, the radio show, which is also podcast, which will be the Weekly Rush with myself and Sharon Mon, and that would be www.wwdbam.com. And again, if you buy my book, and again, you're going to get one, obviously, but if you buy the only thing I recommend is if I give a book out to anyone, please donate $25 to any charity that you want, because again, I like to pay it forward for every book I either sell or give out.
Will do, sir. Will do. Pete Trabucco. I usually finish these things off with last words for the people. Pete Trabucco, give some last words for the people. Be some words to live by, something that you heard a long time ago, or just whatever pops into your head at this moment in time. Pete Trabucco, last words for the people.
Well, the one thing I can state is, and again, by writing my books, what comes out to me is enjoy your life. Don't be on the sidelines. Do all the things that you can do. Understand that we don't live forever, and that we should all enjoy every day, one day at a time, and never stop telling your family, your mom, your dad, your brothers, your siblings, just your friends, that you love them, because you just never know when you'll get that call.
Well, there you have it, party people. Pete Trabucco, man, that he has already led a life. Roller coasters, pilot, acting, motivational speaker, but I guess his best accomplishment is putting defibrillators all over the country, and it all started in Jersey. I guess a little company in Texas, but by way of Jersey. I'm so happy that he did that. I'm so glad that he did that. And so many people are alive because he did that, helping out with that legislation, putting it through in New Jersey. And I guess once you get Jersey and New York into the mix, the whole rest of the country pretty much falls into place. There's a lot of people up there. And if they're doing something, hey, I guess everybody else wants to keep up with what they're doing as well. All right. Some people in the South would say, ooh, New York, that's some big city stuff. Well, New York, they got a lot of people. And when you got that many people jammed together, some good ideas come out of the mix. So there. We need people. We need people. And sales. I forgot about sales. The guy's always a salesman, no matter what. Pete, you're the goods, man. You're the goods. Cool in the gang, as it were. All right. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it, man. I'll keep following you around. Pete Trabucco. Everybody follow him around. PeteTrabucco.com. That website pretty much says it all. It gives you all the 10 poles of Pete Trabucco for sure. And I got it all in the show notes. It's all there. So click the links. Click, click, click. All right. Now, if I'm turning my attention to you, would like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out. Well, I encourage you to give me a call at radio at 30. I was talking about Miami, and I remember my 305 number. All right. I encourage you to give me a call at 501-470-6386 or email radiowhat.com. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, radiowhat.com, djlittlerock.com. What makes you famous? Peace. I'm out of here.